Up, everybody, for the dozens of you that are here already, right on time. For those East Coasters, you're amazing. For those joining us in Europe, thank you so much for coming to the event. We're gonna have some fun today. I'll give just a minute to get the chat rolling. If you've attended a Partner Hacker event before, you know I like to be social in the chat. So everybody say what's up, where are you calling in from? I doubt there's anyone on the West Coast. I'm sure we're mostly Europe and East Coast right now. So what's up, where are you calling from? Let's see, Stockholm. That's still on my list. Still on my list.
Oh, you need to come, Jared.
I know. I'm going to be doing a Europe tour actually in end of June into early July. So I'll make Stockholm on the list. I got a Paris
Just
trip.
tell me when, and I'll host you.
Okay, perfect. We'll make it happen. Dublin, Toronto, and where do we have our panel from today? So we'll go ahead and start. So Milia, that's where you're currently
Stockholm.
Okay, perfect. Andrew.
Clitheroe, so just a bit north of Manchester, UK.
Amazing. Good.
I'm coming to you from Dublin in Ireland.
Perfect. Well, we have quite the international crew here, representing some parts of the EU, some parts not, some parts states, and happy to be here to talk about something fun. We'll give it one more minute for people to roll in, and then we're going to kick things off. Have a fun conversation this morning about a hard topic during tough times. There's certainly a whole lot of new religion around just the impact and the ability for partnerships to drive revenue in the business. And that's where all the attention is. But at the same time, we all know that we can utilize this to impact retention, to drive winning back customers. And this event was kind of precipitated by a kind of a joint partnership where we'd produced an ebook, right, with Oneflow. So maybe we tell a little bit about that too. So that would be an asset for folks, afterwards to take a look at. Amelia, if you want to brief that, and then we'll hop into the chat.
Yeah, sure. We partnered up together with you and HubSpot to make an ebook, and we didn't just want to make another ebook. And we had a discussion about what really matters to our customers and to us. And inevitably, we ended up talking about the current times, how people and companies are scared right now. With the tough times for most businesses, many are struggling to keep customers, and it's becoming increasingly more difficult to win back those who left, which means that they have to cut costs as well, and something that will affect everybody. So we wanted to create something that would help companies overcome those challenges and effectively win back their customers. And we wanted to share something that was really tangible and applicable, and not just ramble on and on about just another topic. And that led to the book.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the partner forces coming together to help the ecosystem and the community. So we'll start with intros then, right there, Amelia. So there we go, Oneflow. Thank you so much for helping shepherd all of us together. And then also joined by Krevin O'Malley from HubSpot out of the Dublin office. And then Andrew from Avidly. So that's the crew here today. And I want to kick it off with just like a conversation starter. Here's what I'm seeing happen right now in the market is that partner programs have always been seen, I think if you're SaaS native, through the lens of, hey, how do I acquire more pipeline and more customers, right? So almost as a source function, almost looked at separately. In other words, most of the time, how partners are reported on is through an operating model. Meaning you're looking at kind of like, hey, what's partner going to do to the business? And there's some line item in there and it's, pipeline. I'll kick this off as a question. If you're starting there, right? If there's a CRO pressure or some sales leadership pressure that's starting there, how do you create the same kind of, let's say reporting impact in like kind of starting from, hey, what's the baseline for how partnerships impact the current revenue? If we're at 50 million ARR, 100 million ARR, let's make sure that we're not, dropping a point in retention. Where would you start to kind of have that similar alignment that they're pushing you to drive, source pipeline and deals? How do you create that same alignment on the success side for retention, just from a measurement or, tracking perspective, or even like that top level KPI?
Krevin, I'm super interested to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing I would say, as somebody who leads an inside sales organization, the corporate sales team across EMEA for HubSpot, I'm very aligned that salespeople in our organization are measured on numerous metrics. And a lot of our business is done with implementation partners to give great service, to give great onboarding experiences, to ensure speed to value. So that sense of productivity on the customer side is increased. And I think we have to be as nuanced about the partner relationship as we are with how we look at the sales landscape. So, simply looking at our partner community as another revenue line, I don't think that's doing it justice. I think that is part of the picture. But there's no doubt when I talk to my customer success management team, when I talk to my contract management team, those accounts where we are turning up with a partner to really go deep and deliver value and deliver a good experience to that customer, retention rates are higher, upsell cross sell opportunity is higher, lifetime value of the customer is higher. Everything moves in a good direction when we turn up to our customers as part of a team. And I think the simple perspective for me on that is, there was a time in the past where in tech, especially tech companies and perhaps big tech, felt they had all the answers. I don't think the problems that B2B and even B2C businesses have today can be solved by one tool or one platform or one company. So that aggregation of service and that kind of open source, not just in terms of technologies, but in terms of relationships and how you turn up to the customer, that's crucial. And for a sales individual or a sales organization to differentiate, I think you need to have that type of collaborative approach.
I think what I just heard is, so obviously HubSpot, I think the initial partner program fame, so to speak, came from the wildly successful agency program.
Yeah.
And now I think the ISV and tech partner program is really starting to take off as well. In that process, I'm curious, when you're selling and setting up customers, I'd have to imagine that understanding like the 360 view, so to speak, of their tech stack, like I just saw yesterday, they announced like an integration with Outreach, for example, like on the HubSpot, platform. So like, are sellers then looking for during the process, hey, here's the integration partners that we need to make sure post sale, right, are connected right away? Because that, I feel like that's where you could go from, hey, I'm responsible for sales, to showing like a clear and measurable impact on the activation and retention side, right away, is by, hey, here's 7 integration partners that this company has. And that's where kind of this nearbound thing comes in. And even if they're not necessarily managing the renewal, they can be setting that customer up for more success from the start using understanding and passing that off to the CSM.
Yeah. And I think you're right. You talked about the wildly successful marketing agency sort of history, and it continues today. It's not either or, that continues for lots of our agency partners and for lots of the customers that we co-serve. Their support, their packages, their involvement is a huge part of that value. And yet, to go across that platform conversation, we've had to broaden the scope of partners that we do business with. So, tech partners, platforms, CRM, all of that becomes part of the suite of options that we offer our customers, giving them more choice, delivering more value. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like on day one, you may solve a problem for a customer through integrations with 6 or 7 or 9, but this doesn't stay still. So 9 will become 15. Like business is becoming more complex. I don't think complex is a negative. It allows us to differentiate if it's done well. And we have to be the type of platform who are open to integrating with multiple partners and more than what the customer may perceive they need today, because tomorrow that game changes and we need to move with it.
Well, let's talk about, Amelia, maybe I think you have a good perspective on this, is what about that utilization over time? Like one of the things that I've seen is there might be that identification of, oh, there's 7, 9, 10, whatever number of integrations that this person could utilize at the start of a sales cycle. But then, that account moves over 3 months, 6 months. Are all 7, 8, 9, 10 activated? Or for example, maybe there is some utilization droppage or a disconnect or something like that. Like these are things where I feel like partnerships can play a proactive role. What's your perspective on kind of that time horizon post sale around integrations?
No, but super super important, and it's something that we also lift in the ebook. So those of you who haven't had the chance to read it, please go and do. But you talk a lot about the importance of keeping track of those indicators, those when an integration is gone from being enabled, but it's not actively used after 3, 6, 9, 12, 36 months, and using all of, not just integration indicators, but any partner related activities as indicators for health score on your customers. Since it's not just tech partnerships we're interested in, it's agencies, implementators, whatever kind of partnerships within the ecosystem that is a overall health indicator for their customers.
And over time, as you see those, there's almost like I don't want to get into cohort analyses, but how do you start to think about demonstrating that impact? Like I opened up the kind of the conversation with there's, as much pressure as ever around sourcing revenue and pipeline, et cetera. At the same time, we know that CEOs and boards are absolutely prioritizing shoring up the customer base, right? What are some, ideas or thoughts, things that you've seen to anyone on the panel around, kind of benchmarking, right? So like we've all seen aggregate data like, oh, this, if there's 3 or more integrations, there's X, Y more activation, right? Or retention. How do you think about kind of benchmarking those cohorts? Have you going through a process like that or seeing anything to help drive those? I'm seeing
definitely quick comment on that. Definitely an interesting space. And when we talk about customer success, we have a group within that team on the HubSpot side who are focused on strategic accounts. And this data is available for all accounts. But if we look at the strategic accounts, what we're looking at within the data and almost behavioral analytics with respect to integrations is if customer A on point of sale purchased 5 integrations, 8 integrations, we can see how many of those are activated or live, or if there's a drop off. And I think the issue is that is a signal that there's a problem with the value they perceive from the product or service they're receiving, in our case, the HubSpot platform. And we need to get ahead of that. So that needs to prompt our success team to have an engaged conversation with their point of contact and not just one point of contact. And when we're having those conversations, we need to turn up with our partner who perhaps was there during implementation and perhaps is there in terms of ongoing services. Because I think one of the reasons you touched on it there in terms of shoring up the customer base, because of the macroeconomic climate we're in right now, the pressure to reduce costs, this sort of acronym of more with less, that pressure is what's causing churn in the first place, because there will always be cheaper alternatives. But I think if people lean into the value of the service, which is where partnerships, all of the data in our world says when we lean with partners or lead with our partners, the average deal size, the upsell opportunity, the churn rate's lower, everything moves in a positive direction for the experience the customer has. And this is something that my business and with a partner like Avidly, who are our elite partner, they do this really well, and that's important. It's trust between both of us turning up in the right way for the customer.
So, Andrew, chime in with you there. How are you thinking about kind of chasing that? Like measuring, hey, this is a fully connected account, this is not, and then helping customers understand there's either dead tech spend or things that aren't working. So, hey, I see you're using X and Y product, but you don't have these integrations connected, right? So like, how are you helping your customers chase down that, gap between value and what they're using?
Absolutely. Yeah. So just to sort of follow on from Craven's talk in terms of partnerships, that's from the partner side. That is absolutely true. I think the way in which we work with HubSpot, not just through scoping and launching of the product, the platform, but the ongoing relationship. We're speaking with the customer daily, weekly, and bringing back that intel to make sure that we're constantly tweaking and moving with the sort of changing tides. But yeah, for sure, I think when we talk around engagement and usage and retention over the long term, I think as an agency, we package things around HubSpot. So we're not just implementing the platform. We may have some ongoing services, workshops, training, delivery of campaigns and whatnot. But it's about on the platform specifically looking at what is the time to value of that we're able to deliver? What are we saying we can do in the sales process, and how soon can we do that and actually communicate that very clearly to the stakeholders? I think just as a best practice is the sooner we do that in those early days is absolute gold dust for a long-term relationship. That's going to get the 50-50s in the room off your back. Is going to allow you to roll into the more adventurous experimentation, trying new things, right? So I think it's just nailing the absolute must first, really having a good communication or reporting loop on how we speak to stakeholders. Are we speaking to the right people even after that first implementation is done? And then on an ongoing basis as an agency is looking at, as Amelia mentioned, the health of that account. So that is, HubSpot's got some great insights into usage that we can leverage, but we have our own engagement index, which looks at things like NPS, finance, even, how are they paying? Is the project on time? How did the team feel about things? And how are those goals, those results, those like marketing KPIs tracking? And we bring that all together and we have like a score out of 10, which calculates things. And we use that to be on the absolute front foot. So we're not just looking at those lagging indicators. We're getting those early signs, and we can jump in as a service provider and take that human element to the customer and make sure that we feed that back not just to the customer, to our team, but to HubSpot and the guys that we have a great ongoing relationship to.
Well, from your point of view too, I bet you're sitting a little bit closer because you're not necessarily the first party in the software components, like how you're orchestrating this tech. You're really there as beholden. That's why I've always loved working with solution and innovative partners like an Avidly, is that like at the end of the day, who is most beholden to customer outcomes? It's typically like the service partner, right? The solution
Yep.
partner, right? Like you only earn your dollars by like, hey, I got exactly whatever I paid for, right? In software, I remember they're not here, so I won't disparage them, but another map that wasn't HubSpot. I remember sitting in Sydney, Australia with a whole bunch of executives and this big APAC kickoff, all from this other map. And they were like, someone brought up the question, well, why is our feature utilization across the entire portfolio less than 25%? Right. So like the point is there's a lot of shelfware out there, especially in some legacy platforms. But I think as a service provider, you probably have a lot of intent or signals or ways that you can help other ISVs. Meaning if a tech company is doing great things with you at Avidly, you have a really trusted relationship, and you hear from one of your customers that, like, for example, they're going through an evaluation. Like they're using X technology, but they're like, hey, we're looking to reduce spend and we're looking at other options. That might have been one of my customers as a tech partner for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Then all of a sudden, because of the economic environment, they're now looking to cut costs, consolidate, etc.
Yeah.
Andrew, wouldn't you have the ability to help first and kind of say, hey, FYI, tech partner, right? Tell me a little bit about that. Have you seen those types of things where you've been able to ping a tech partner and go, hey, I think there's some risk here. We need to get in front of it.
For sure. I think that the way that things go, as HubSpot's grown to be an ecosystem and a very broad platform, as an agency, we've expanded, and it's quite scary sometimes how involved with our clients' businesses we become. We become an extension of the team. We become essentially part of that business, and that is our goal, for retention, of course. But you hear all sorts. It might be some hiring software, it could be some stock management system. There's all sorts going on, and I think where HubSpot or another vendor, we can see where this will work, and we're going to advise on that for sure. They actually want us to bring in a tech stack. They're not necessarily, they're looking at us as a technical partner, and we need to, okay, we prioritize HubSpot, but we have to be aware of that. So absolutely, we do get ahead of that, and we're speaking to these people daily almost to help them grow. So for sure that does come back, and I think as a sort of the team on the ground, so to speak, we're going out and visiting and bringing that information back from the decision makers, the people that are feeling that pain. And I think getting face to face with that sometimes super valuable, and to a vendor or a different software partner to be able to pass that on and be the middleman, so to speak, is a great thing for both parties. It means that we can deliver that information quickly to you guys. It means that we can get in on the early developments and sort of share that in a controlled way, and gain some great feedback and pass that on. So yeah, totally into that sort of way of working, and there's a lot that comes out of those conversations for sure.
The thing I'd want to call out, I think that's very important for us to recognize that may get lost in management details and ops and all sorts of other stuff, is this simple fact. If you've ever been involved in a large account, anyone here, like show me some emojis in here. If you've ever been involved in a large account and there's a churn that's happening, what happens? Is it like, hey, we're at the beginning of really thinking there's not much value here, and we're going to start looking at some competitors. We're going to give you 90 days to save us and reactivate us and make us wildly successful? No, what happens? What happens? You get a cancellation request. That's what you get. And by not working proactively with the partners that might be closer to that buyer intent, you're losing that signal. Like, there's no way you're going to get that signal, that honest, like, hey, there's a business initiative to cut. So your product utilization might look okay, right, by some benchmark. But if there was a conversation where it's like, hey, Andrew, I know you're our primary kind of like MarTech partner. We're really trying to reduce our tech spend by 35% this year. Like, you hear that, you're going to be like, hey, guys, you're going to have to maybe do some contract saves, do a little bit of churn here to like go recognize some upsell elsewhere. Like, that's the talk track, people. These conversations are happening. And would you rather get a cancellation request? Or would you rather have a partner that you have a great relationship going, hey, I have some intel. You're going to have to work hard on this account. I think I might be able to help.
You're touching on a really interesting point there, Jared, and just a couple of comments on that. And I'm a sales leader. So in the time when the economy is going really well, celebrating those large deals, having an organization that has momentum and fuel behind it, there's no better place to be. And yet macroeconomically, that's not our story today. That's not the environment in which we're operating in. So I agree with the points that you and Andrew made, but I would also suggest that the retention story, the ability to renew a contract, and it's really applicable in SaaS, of course, it starts before the initial sale. And one piece of advice, and it's in the playbook, but is we have to resist the temptation to oversell on day one, because you talked about shelfware. But if you break that trust, and if you sell more than is required, and they don't extract the type of value your customers from the platform or the map or the CRM or whatever it is, then you're in a difficult situation when you get into those conversations further down, because we're talking about them trying to save money. The second thing I would say is, and Andrew talked about, meeting different people across the account. On a pre-sale conversation, when we do deal reviews, we talk about multi-threading and who are we talking to. If you're only talking to one person, it's very easy for a customer to say goodbye to you. I mean, even in a human test, it's probably easier to walk away from one person than a group of people. You have to be in and around that company and understanding the pain and challenges and problems that they're trying to solve, to actually feel and turn up in the moments when you're not in the room and they feel there's value attached to your platform. So for sure, once you make the sale, and this is the great thing about SaaS, right? Customers have choice. You have to continually earn that level of business and develop that level of trust to continue into the future. So yeah, +1 to the comments made there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it starts even before making the sale, like talking about the trust and the partner ecosystem. Being an up and coming ISV company as Oneflow is, like in new markets where we don't have the biggest customer base yet, without our partner ecosystem, we would be nothing. We would never even get invited to the table. So we're completely reliant on those partnerships to have that trust with an unknown brand in a new market.
100%. And in the chat too, I'm prompting questions. So folks, feel free to chime in here too. We'll bring your comments up and kind of opine on them as they come through. I think that's such an important talk track and realization for us to kind of have, is that at the end of the day, there's only so many things that you can do with a partner at a given time. For example, like if you're working with let's say a solutions partner like an Avidly, and you're a tech company, maybe HubSpot, you have some more capacity because you're an elite partner, Andrew, right? Like you can work more deals. But like if you're a normal ISV and you have a friendly partner relationship and there's something happening there, the reality is that you probably can't work 10 accounts at once, right? Like you're not just going to do that. So what other plays do you have with your partners? And I think that's what I was kind of prompting is like, how do we have those conversations with our partners, right? Is to like bring forth, not the best news, but to work on that, because what I found is that ended up becoming my entire talk track with CS. How do we use partners as an insight or intent signal to engage CSMs with partners directly to work on fixing what's wrong with customers? And here was the cool part. Whenever you engage partners to fix what's wrong with customers, whether it's an integration or it's a service partner, what ends up happening? Well, the partner gets educated, right? And if that partner gets more educated on the customer challenges of utilizing your tech or whatever, then are you much more likely to be able to potentially, go source revenue in the future together, right? So it allows you to start with the customer as well, that has a feedback loop and a cycle back to revenue, right? In fact, it's kind of funny. I'd be curious on your side, Amelia, too, if you'd seen this. There's two quick funny stories on the HubSpot side. Like the fastest growing HubSpot partner back in the day was I believe Marcus Sheridan, like the pool cleaning company. So it's like a kind of an insider story. He owned a pool cleaning company. He used HubSpot marketing automation. Then he ended up selling HubSpot marketing automation to every pool cleaning company in the world. Became like one of the fastest growing HubSpot agencies. But he did that by actually helping other pool companies first. It was all success driven, and then became a giant distribution channel. At Drift, our top partner was, you're not going to believe this, you haven't heard it. There's a guy that ran a hot air balloon company. I'm not kidding. Eliav. He literally did hot air balloon tours. And he used the bot to build out his booking system, answer questions, and automate 100% of his customer support. And we called him like the bot wizard. This guy's just crazy. He's obsessed with these bots, like more than anyone. And we just started putting him into accounts, that had problems, like that we couldn't really save. And he would go build the wildest bots. Then he started charging money, and then he built an entire business around it. So he had a hot air balloon company and pivoted to a tech company. The point is that he became our first partner to reach $1 million in sourced revenue, right? And it started from helping customers first. And those, every ecosystem I see that, like, there's always some stories like that where you're like, hey, by focusing on helping people with their problems, guess what happens? It's like the fastest growing, largest partners end up being the ones who were helping first.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting consideration, for my sales team when we're on deals and we're on accounts, and we talk about deal and account fit in terms of products. I mean, we obviously sell a suite of products and a platform, and not every deal or every use case needs the full stack. So we got to have a sort of a conversation to uncover where will the most value be delivered. I think the same is true with the partner selection piece. So for sure, as you mentioned at the top of the call, Jared, partners are a revenue line, and they bring lots of business to companies like ourselves and others. But our sales team uncover opportunities, and a moment comes where we have to go, okay, well, which partner do I need to help me bring this over the line and do the best job for the customer? And you mentioned there in terms of larger partners probably having more capacity, but I think we have to do a good level of diligence and discovery on the industry, the size of company, the growth ambition. There's a whole host of things we need to uncover. And then we have a relatively new role in HubSpot, our service consultants over the last 12, 18 months. And their job is exclusively to kind of sit in the middle of the sales individual who's got the product and the quota and all of the joy that comes in that role, and the partner community who have loads of different skill sets by industry, by expertise, boots on the ground in different countries. And they will help us select the right partner. And in the same way that if you sell the wrong product, if you select a poorer partner than you otherwise might with all the information, you're starting the relationship on in less than an optimized way. So I think we're getting more and more sophisticated all the time by making sure that we match up the customer and their needs and ambitions with the right type of partner. And that kind of ecosystem approach that we turn up in front of that customers, that's critical. And I can definitely, with loss reviews, and we have lots of them, right? It happens in every business. It may be that we just matched up the wrong product or the wrong partner with the particular moment in time for that customer. So that's something on the way in as well. We need to spend a bit of time getting right.
So Amelia, on your side, you all see as much contract volume as anyone, and I want to bring this up because I can reference it in the recording whenever we republish this. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with Patrick Campbell. He used to run a company called Profitwell, and they did a lot of analysis on things like churn and pricing, right? So they had a fantastic show back in the day. It was kind of before its time. It was called Pricing Page Breakdown, which seems like the lamest thing in the world. Yes, I watched it. I would actually watch how, these guys would break down a pricing page. And one of the things that they talked about was we have this resistance in SaaS to letting a customer, let's say, renew at less money, right, versus a cancellation. And the churn data and the cohort analysis on this is like, if you save a customer, and it isn't even at a 50% discount, right, it's the multiple on that aggregated across the Profitwell data wasn't like 2x 3x, it was like 17x more likely that you would make another dollar from them. So I have to imagine, like, during this process, that, like, hey, during tough times, like, don't lose a customer, right? Like, that would be the mission and thing from partners, is like, don't lose a customer, surround them with your integration partners, and let's get them a deal to make sure that they stay. Because if they go, it's so much harder to absolutely get them back. So the win back play kind of starts there. And I mean, y'all see as much as anything. I'd love your comments on that, Amelia.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, save a customer at any cost, right? Because winning them back will cost you way more than keeping them, even if it's at a reduced price. And I mean, being a software like Oneflow, not necessarily being a CRM or an ERP, or maybe the most sort of I don't want to say business critical, but the biggest of business intelligence systems within our customers. We instead need to look at, like, how can we get that stickiness with our partners. So even though we sort of lower the revenue of a customer, we can keep it and grow it over time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'd love to add something to that. I agree with Amelia's comment. I think it's quoted in the playbook as well. If we step right back here, what we're trying to do is solve problems for our customers. And in such a volatile economic climate, the shape and size of those problems are changing at pace and at scale. And if we turn up blindly with, well, this account was always worth, 2, and I'm not willing to go below 2. In fact, I want to go to 3. It just, I think, comes across tone deaf to the challenges and pain and difficulty going on within the client account. And, there's clearly a commercial point where it may not be economically viable to retain a service. But I think in most cases, companies unfortunately allow the churn to happen before they really unpack that and rescale and resize the service and the product that they offer to solve the problem that may have been reduced or increased, but it's a dynamic thing.
Yep, I was going to add into that as well. I think from an agency standpoint, exactly the same experience. Flexibility is key. I think the challenges people go through, if you stay with them as a partner, the price comes second to the solution. It's a long-term benefit for sure. I think we've had multiple versions of that throughout COVID and all the various things that have happened over the few years, and the people that have hung around are the ones where we did go down to a bare bones service or a bare bones campaign. Yep. And then now we're in a place where that trust is maintained, and you can have much more productive conversations the year after, the quarter after, if you're showing that human element. I think as an agency, the scaling conversation is always something we're trying to do, but we've spent time to look at, let's forget about us for just a minute here and actually act for our customers. Let's just do something that might not make sense today, but we know that unless it is totally financially unviable, it typically really, really helps. In this topic of churn and retention, I think people really appreciate that flexibility and not backing people into a corner where they have no option apart from tapping out or spending more money.
Andrew, maybe you can help set some context over the past 3 years, because I feel like a lot of us have amnesia. Do y'all remember COVID when everything locked down, like the beginning, when we had literally no idea what happened, right? Like we all want to forget because
aged me about 20 years that time. Yeah, I think right. Just to dive into that, especially, I think we had waves and it sort of built, and we were talking around that this is, we're a marketing agency, let alone a software platform, so we really are the first to get cut out of budgets for sure. And we were okay. We thought where things were going. And then I think overnight, probably about 20-30% of the customers went, hey, we need to just talk, we need to pause, we need to reduce, we need to do this. So we sort of, obviously the alarm bells started to ring. And I think you could look at that a number of ways, which is, okay, we can just cut costs immediately and stay as we are. But we got together and just spoke to everyone on a one-to-one basis, went out and visited people, and kind of threw out, I mean, we had packages, we had levels, all this sort of stuff, menus
You
and
were able to
pricing.
reduce though, and then to bounce back. I think a lot of
For sure.
businesses forgot that, like, hey, we just went through this like not that long ago. Like, yes,
Exactly.
we're in a longer tail recession, but the play is still the same. Like, reduce for a little bit, and one of two things is going to happen. This company is going to be able to reach some, homeostasis, and then start to reinvest in growth again, or they're going to die.
Yep.
Like, that's the reality. Like, that's just the economic environment that we're in. So, like, if they're reducing, you have to reduce with them. Otherwise, you're not much of a fair vendor. And if they start to grow again, then you're going to grow again with them.
100%. And that's the conversation we can have when we know that things are better because you took that action. The doors are open to bring that conversation back to the table. If you just held on for dear life, it's can only go one way, which is probably going to go down anyway. So you may as well keep that door open. Yeah.
Yeah, build that trust. I mean, right? Like, you show that you actually are there to help. If you're there to help, then you have that trust over a long term. And this gave me an idea in chat too. This is actually a pretty simple one, which I remember doing a couple times in a few different reports, trying to report through it. But it landed with my CS leadership really well. Was like, look, I won't give the exact CAC number. I was a little bit less than 27K at the time, but for every single partner save, I was like, that's 20 grand, right? So like every month it's like, hey, there were 7 partner saves. That's 140 grand right there. Like, if you were trying to measure the impact of this too, like, just take your CAC, and if there's a save, you just won that CAC back, because you're going to have to replace that with the fully burdened CAC of a new account, right? So like the compounding effects of churn is, that's why the best, CEOs are always, wildly obsessed with customer success, right? Is that once you reach a level of maturity too, like HubSpot, right? I remember seeing HubSpot's, some of their, I wouldn't say leaked financials, but let's say publicly kind of massaged financials before, going public. And then to look at the business today, how much of the business is run off of, new bookings versus the install base, right? Like, at some point, and it's actually not that crazy. It could be anywhere from 20 million in revenue to 100 million in revenue. You start booking more of your revenue from current customers, right out of the gate. So like, protecting every single one of those is by far, Criven, you mentioned this earlier, do more with less. Well, there's a whole lot less you could do if you're having to make up the CAC on the accounts that you already had in your book last quarter, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting, just that space we're discussing at the moment. I mean, HubSpot is not a small company, but when we look at the landscape of marketing automation or CRM, or that sort of platform provider services that exist in the marketplace, we certainly feel like we have huge opportunity and huge potential. There are much bigger providers in that space, and we have to differentiate ourselves almost in a kind of disruptor type attitude. And part of being a disruptor is doing what the industry, or what businesses who led that industry for years, doing things different. And I think tying people into what looked, to all intents and purposes, like old style on-premise contracts with no break clauses and no ability to reduce, you're just not going to develop trust and have a good reciprocal relationship. And business at its core is, human to human. And, to Andrew's point a few moments ago, if you support those businesses and those people in their roles in the difficult times, you will win X multiplier long term. And I think the other thing, just to state, is, we're in really, really crazy volatile times at the moment, because we're not the only tech company by any means. In fact, tech generally as a sector came through the COVID period really positively. Now, it was hugely challenging from a human perspective and a workforce management perspective, and looking after our customers and our partners. But people leaned into tech in the absence of face-to-face engagement. So what happened post-tech, when everybody kind of went back to work physically, is they probably felt like maybe we'd oversized some of these contracts, and maybe we're not getting the value we need out of this product. So we're needing to turn up for our customers in terms of managing the install base in a really supportive and empathetic way, and helping to match the price of contracts we give with the growth ambitions they have, as well as play the net new acquisition game, which, you're touching on it there, Jared. Like, it has a cost. It's really difficult. And if you can look after your installed base, that is a really healthy place to build growth from.
And I think just
Absolutely.
to tie into that, Screven, what you just said, I mean, we talk about it in the ebook as well. I think, with existing customer, even if it means going to freemium model and keeping that customer and keeping that habit from the customer using your product, it means you still have a chance to turn things around further down the line. So I really think having that PLG thought process active at all times is super important.
Yeah.
I'm going to launch a quick poll here real quick, because this is going to be interesting. Let's launch this real quick. All right. So take a look at this. I want to everyone in the audience to come answer this. And so if you go to poll here, you should be able to see that. And our panelists can as well. So what role is your number one source of nearbound and partner revenue? So meaning, who are you getting this from? What contacts at your partners? Are you getting most of your sourced revenue from account executives, leadership, CSMs? Who are you getting this from? I want to see some more come in. It's interesting, because I have a point to make. The reason why I published a poll, I got a point to make here that I think is very important. All right, there's just a handful of votes here. Just for the sake of time. So for those of you that chimed in, let me hide this from the stage real quick. I'm like doing some stuff on the fly. Here's why I think this is so important to bring up, is that I've always found that my best source of pipeline is my partner CSMs, right? It's not account executives. Why? Because the account executive are typically already sold the deal. And especially if you're talking more mid-market sales, right? Or even if you're talking volume, velocity SMB, they have so many accounts that they don't necessarily have that deep relationship over the customer lifetime the way that a CSM or AM would. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if we're really going to be able to drive and source pipeline, then we better be really good partners at helping our partner CSMs save their customers, right? So like that's kind of like the inverse play to like think about this. So let's talk a little bit about CSMs really quick. Nearbound is this word that's kind of like, codifying some motions around sales, marketing, and success. When it comes to the CSM side, how are you thinking about surfacing, those opportunities to perhaps give some help back to partners? From either a data standpoint or a dashboard standpoint, and proactively work out like CSM to CSM, right? And establish those relationships, because if you can, like I said, that's, you help that CSM and then they own 2 accounts you want to go after, you're right. That's your best path to partner source pipeline, in my opinion. Comments or feedback on the CSM play, on helping them first to utilize them as a revenue play later?
Definitely hugely positively disposed towards the CSM organization. And you kind of got me thinking, listening to the point you were making. I'm not sharing anything commercially sensitive here, but we would be fairly well known for an inbound model of lead creation. And there are many paths by which an inbound lead lands on the table of our salesperson. Okay. The most interesting lead that lands on our salesperson in terms of the ability to close it and the value of that deal is what we call service qualified leads. So leads from our CSM team. So there's an interesting dynamic there between sales professionals and success teams that probably, salespeople, and as a salesperson, I make this comment, we may not leverage and we may not use and amplify as much as we possibly could. There is gold within the depth of knowledge that a CSM knows the account, which will always be to a much more advanced level than the salesperson, to your point. So it's a really interesting point. And in HubSpot, those service qualified leads are the most valuable for us. So there's definitely truth in what you say.
There's
It's
an
100%
interesting.
true for
Go
us
ahead,
here
Amelia.
at Oneflow as well. Sorry, Jared. It's
No, go
100%
for it.
true for us here at Oneflow as well. Like with tech partners, CSM is our best chance at a really high quality lead. And also, like if you look at sales cycle and hit rate, if you would compare getting a sales executive lead or an account executive lead or a CSM executive lead, I don't know the truth to this, but gut feeling is that it's higher and better with the CSM lead. However, with other types of partner, more commercial partners, I think it's that doesn't necessarily even have a CSM as a title role within. I don't know how you work with titles, Andrew, over at Avidly, but with solution partners, we work closely with the consultants, which is the equivalent really of a CSM, the one that is out with the partner, knowing the partner, meeting them every day, and has really the ear to the ground. So yeah, 100% CSM is the way to go.
For sure. Yeah, we have like a consultant, the sort of client success team, but they are more on the service side. But for sure, they're bringing the problem from the client, they're taking that through, and they can feed that straight back. And it's the discovery is done, the qualification is done. You're already 2/3 the way through the process, and yeah, it's exactly the same. And I think that goes back to the original chat on growth generally, on how we position growth within the platform. For us as an agency, we would 100% almost just use that really from our side if we can. It is hard to, like you say, throw the kitchen sink in if it's not necessary. We don't want to do that. That's going to disrupt things. So doing it the inverse way is much safer and much more strategic. And yeah, it's a much better approach.
I'm going to give everyone a homework. Go ahead, Amelia.
I was just going to say that, and as a tech provider, the most critical thing for us is to be top of mind there with those CSM and with those client solution managers or consultants, and that's really the biggest struggle. But if you manage to do that, as you say, Andrew, you have a really well. It's not the foot in the door; it's almost a signed contract already.
The last part on that from our side is that where the key is that as a provider to us, if you guys train, support, and we have that good flow back and forward, that's the key. I think if we bring a service-led lead that's wrong, like to you guys, that's disruptive. So I think having a good internal training and support for our CSMs, which HubSpot have a fantastic approach, and we have, like, as a sort of customer success lead within Avidly as well, speaking with people at a different level over the whole accounts that we all work on and have some more strategic discussions. It's great to have that training alongside the other types of support. So yeah, it's key.
I think the theme of this point sort of suggests there's a risk in buyers that potentially we haven't completely mapped out our service. So obviously CSMs in HubSpot or anywhere, they're giving leads on the install base customers. So in terms of job description, they don't have a role with net new. It's all about the customers that are in our book, and we try to retain, we try to cross, we try to upsell. But in our most complicated engagements, maybe larger deals that are on the line, the purchasing decision is it's not easy, but it's nearly easier than mapping out what the future state looks like. And we've actually used some of our CSM people on net new acquisition, so I'm not talking about customers, to try to win the deal, to map out and to let them see and know this individual. This is going to be my go-to person for the long term. Not you, Mr. or Mrs. Sales Executive, even though we think we do an amazing job. The relationship is at the service level. So we've got to get that mix right between giving customers what they want, even on the way in, as opposed to growing and nurturing.
Right. My good friend Jill Rowley calls it, every time I've accidentally called it the sales to CS handoff, she says hug. It's a hug. Like you need to embrace before the deal's closed, do it live. It's a hug. Yeah. It's not a handoff. I'm like, okay, very fair. And I want to give some homework, or be happy to hear this in chat. And you can ask any questions around this. This conversation really precipitated an interesting thought for me. Like, I'm actually geeking out on this live with you all right now. It's like, how could we as profession proactively build some sort of program or ability for us to proactively seek, let's say, for example, you have 5, 10, 20 target partners this quarter, whatever that number is, and really do an audit or assessment of the CS team where they're proactively listening and looking through their accounts. Like, okay, I have, 100 accounts in my name as a CSM. These 15 overlap with that customer. These 3, though, these are all risks, right? I see like they have business problems going on. They have these other things going on, whatever. Okay, fantastic. You have 3 accounts where you see as risk for that partner, and you could trade intel and notes to help. Yes, fantastic. What CSM is not going to take an email from you where it's like, hey, we identified 3 accounts where we potentially identified some risk. Do you want to hop on and talk about how we could, potentially help save them? I also noticed that there's 3 accounts that you have, right, where we're trying to break into an opportunity. Maybe we could trade some notes. Like that's putting your ecosystems, right, like customer health and retention first. And it's showing that I've been saying that trust comes from helping people reach their promised land. Like that's how you build trust, is that you're actually going to them proactively, not with, hey, I want to talk to you about this account. You're going with them and saying, hey, I want to talk to you about 2 of your customers. So I brought my CSM. I also have a few questions about a couple of yours if you're open to that. No one's not going to take that deal. Everyone's going to take that deal every time. And I think that's why I've always had some conviction that great partner programs need to start with customer success, because that's your source of leads. That's your source of pipeline. That's how you impact the business long term. And if you're just starting on the acquisition side, just starting there, like, hey, how do we source this first deal with this partner? You're not going to be able to get to the place that we just talked about, right? Where you could go to your CSM base and like set up all these meetings with your CSMs and your top partners and really, put a campaign together. So would love anyone's comments on that in the chat or kind of Q&A. We have a handful of minutes left here. I want to thank Amelia, Andrew, Grevin, everybody for coming together. This has been fun. It's been fun.
Thank you,
for having
Jared.
us.
Hard topic, but like I feel like we're the best lever that our companies have right now to be able to put together plays like this and think about that proactively. That intel is, one CSM is only going to have so much information about an account. Your ecosystem of CSMs, like you start to have a lot more intel on this.
Yeah, there's a comment just to plus one what you've said there, Jared. I think it was Askell, the CSO over with you, Amelia, who said it. Maybe it was not in that last chapter, but I enjoyed the last page of the playbook. I'd encourage everybody to read it. But he talked about, watching this webinar, reading the playbook. That's not the answer in of itself. If this prompts a discussion by like-minded people within your business, then you're likely to end up with positive action of the kind that you just summarized there, Jared, where people go, you know what, we've got some shared customers with Avidly. Let's get the equivalent person in Andrew's organization on a call, have a conversation, because if we turn up to our customers like that, then we're not in that sensitive price discussion. Then we're actually adding value and we're solving problems. So yeah, I think this is not a one point destination. We got to keep this conversation going in the businesses that we operate in to try and serve customers better.
Yeah, then you start building nearbound success dashboards and showing like, oh, our CSMs helped out, 25 accounts of our partners last month, and then 50 accounts the next month, and then 60 or whatever. And then just watch the pipeline start to come after that, right? Like you help someone, they're willing to help you. And so that's been my new kick. It's like help first, not give first. Giving, you can send swag. No one cares about swag or tchotchkes, right? But helping them with one of their accounts, that's where you're going to build trust. Bring those things to the table. I wasn't seeing any Q&A. Any other last minute comments? Tom, fully agreeing with the CSM role. They also have that role of giving red flags as they know what is expected from customers' side as much as what can be done internally with partners. Absolutely. Absolutely, Tom.
I think one last comment from me, the playbook says it. I think we said it at the top of the call. It's tough. Like this is not easy stuff. And I think when you join a call like this, hopefully some people and have these kind of conversations within your own company, you just get a little bit of energy, you get a little bit of inspiration and ideas. But I also think those kinds of people and those kinds of companies will navigate the hard parts better. And for sure, economies operate in cycles. For ourselves and for our customers, we need to be there when things turn. And I think the companies who lean into this type of discussion will likely emerge, I think, in a more positive manner. So yeah, really enjoyed the conversation and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, ending with that, I'm definitely taking note on going back to the ecosystem, talking to you all again about the partner CSM to pipeline play, how to offer help and identify risk, and then go back and like utilize that for like, hey, here's 2 accounts that seem like might be a risk for you. Here's how I'm going to generate that. I'm definitely want to produce some more content on that. Thanks everyone for attending. Oneflow, HubSpot, Avidly, PartnerHacker, peace out. We will see you all next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, folks.